Hey, what is up? Productivity and profit, or profit and productivity. Depends on if you're in the Facebook group or the podcast, or maybe you're watching this on Instagram. I don't know. Right now I'm live in the Facebook group. And here is why I'm going to tell you a little bit about why your data might be broken. Everybody thinks they're data driven, and they're not appropriately. And why I don't do why I don't speak and why I don't give blanket advice, because most people are asking the wrong things. So their feedback loops are broken. A good example, I try to use different industries. Hey, Carolyn, a good example is you may say, hey, look, I'm going to try to lower my sodium, which is not always a smart thing to do, but neither here nor there. I'm going to lower my sodium and see what happens. So you remove salty foods, and then you gauge the efficacy of what you have done based on that. The problem being that sodium is not salt, right? Low sodium does not mean not salty. Cornflakes have sodium through the roof. They're not salty, right? Now, it's a very, very small example, and it seems super minor, but there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these things where we don't actually know what we're saying. You know, it may be a matter of semantics, but we're measuring the wrong thing. So our cause and effect loops are broken. So whatever happened because you stopped eating salty foods, not because you dropped your sodium necessarily. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, right? And so there's a lot of when people come in, that's why I almost always, I don't take clients unless they spend time with me, because they might say online or over the phone, you know, this is my problem, this is my goal. And the reality is, and this is what I'm trying. And the reality is, the problem is not the problem that they are saying. The goal is not the goal that they are saying. And what they're doing is not actually what they're doing. What they say they're doing is not actually what they're doing. And it's not a matter of not being truthful. It's just not being aware. So we spend a lot of time with people identifying what are we actually doing, and how are we gauging the efficacy of when we isolate and change variables. Hey, so think about this. Think about anytime you're really serious about something. What are you saying? What are you optimizing for? Because a lot of people might say, hey, look, I'm trying to use fitness again, because that's obviously I have a background in that. I'm trying to overload this particular muscle, so I'm going to use more weight every time I work out. And that's not actually overloading the muscle, right? And people don't know that. So what they do is they try and they try and they try and they do everything right, but they're not actually doing what they think they're doing. And so people say, well, I tried that and it didn't work. And the reality is you had a broken, the relationship between cause and effect was broken. You didn't quite understand what you were doing. And so the effect was of something, but it wasn't the thing you thought you were doing. Right? It's very, very common. The more complex the system, the more this happens, because the more dynamic the variables and the more dynamic the complexities. Okay. So this is why I spend a lot of time with people before I'll even give them a suggestion. My clients, my partners, they call me the king of it depends. And it's not because there's not a way to do it. It's because we're trying to figure out what we're actually trying to get done and what you're actually doing. And again, that the action step is not ambiguous, like stop eating salty foods. If what we mean to say is lower your sodium, that is a very different, very, very different thing than not eating salty foods, right? Sodium or salt is sodium chloride. It's not sodium, right? Sodium bicarbonate. Again, cornflakes are not salty, but they're really high in sodium. So we have to really identify, are we optimizing for the right things? A lot of times it's semantic, right? So think about that, because sometimes we're so focused on getting better at sales, but what we really mean is we want to refine our messaging to get higher qualified prospects on the phone. Those are two very, very different paths if you want to get better at sales, or if you want to dial in your messaging to get higher quality prospects on the phone, right? Things like that. Carolyn says, sometimes I do feel what I'm trying to do, so I don't express it well. It's helpful when someone asks questions. Yep, like you. Thank you. So Carolyn came in, and it was a process of, we spent a couple hours just questioning, Socratic questions, right? Sometimes we don't know what we're trying to do. We really don't. And that's perfectly fine. So we use a process of what we call via negativa. addition by subtraction, right? Maybe you don't know. Again, I like to use examples from all kinds of different domains. Maybe your wife is pregnant and you want to be the best father ever, but you don't know what the best father ever does. You can start by sitting down and deciding what you would never do, what you never want to do, right? Via negativa, what is this not? Because sometimes just avoiding, what I wrote my book about, bumpers, sometimes just avoiding the gutters, avoiding the bad stuff gives you the time and the clarity, and it eliminates the chaos, so you can kind of figure out what it is supposed to be. So a lot of times it's just figuring out what it's not. Right. So think about that. Think about your feedback loops. Make sure you're measuring the right thing. Make sure your language is appropriate. Make sure it's not super ambiguous. If your goal is to eat healthy from now on, incredibly ambiguous. You could ask a million different people. You can ask a million doctors what eating healthy is, and you will get hundreds of thousands, if not a million different answers, right? So how can we possibly gauge? Well, I ate healthy and this was the result. We haven't defined how we're going, what healthy is. I'm going to do more marketing, see what happens. You could ask a million, go online and say, what's the best kind of marketing? You're going to get a million different answers. And so the ambiguous nature of the way we're lexical with our language makes feedback loops completely irrelevant. How can you optimize something when you don't even know what it is? Think about that. That's what I wanted to share today. I'm just in between calls. I just wrote a couple emails. I legitimately, I can't really share my screen here because I'm not on the cool software. Legitimately called these emails the silver bullet. I think this is going to solve a lot of problems for a lot of people, but we're going to test them. I'm gonna get Dan Nicholson to test them in his CPA firm, because if we can do this for a CPA firm, then we did indeed develop the silver bullet. So I'm really excited about that. You know how it goes. The silver bullet's never a silver bullet for long. As soon as it starts working, everybody starts doing it, and then it's just the thing. But think about what we're trying to achieve. Okay, cause and effect. We are often so far off of, this happened because of this, and a lot of it has to do with our language, the ambiguous nature, the way we approach things, the way we say, yeah, I'm going to market more. That's good. That's a good place to start. But how do we gauge the efficacy? Well, we don't know, are you going to just print off a bunch of flyers and say marketing doesn't work, right? So that's that. Just went on a rant in the fitness group today. Obviously, my background's fitness, and we do have a fitness business. So I was talking about the sodium salt conundrum. But it shows up everywhere. It shows up everywhere. We have broken feedback loops. And if we fix those feedback loops, we can start making progress. But that involves understanding what you're talking about. You can't just eat healthy, right? You can't just exercise more. You can't just market more, right? We have to get a little bit more granular. So the whole velocity method is built around, we really have to define, remove the ambiguity, define the complete criteria, and have a way of gauging the efficacy of what we're actually doing, not what we say, because what we're actually doing is often different than what we say, because we often don't have the language, right? We don't, like myself, I don't have much of vocabulary. So it takes a lot of questioning sometimes when an expert wants to know what I'm trying to resolve. They have to ask me a bunch of questions because I don't have their technical language. But without that technical language, we're just guessing, and I don't like guessing. So that's that. You guys are awesome. 12 days of Next Myth starts soon, and I'm going to hop and finish these silver bullet emails. Just 3 emails. I think it's going to move the needle for some people.